Hello there everyone, welcome to Cryptocorps. I am your storyteller and I am here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Theodore Grimsby, but everyone just calls me Ted. If you're reading this, you're already part of the cycle. I need to write that down first, though I'm not sure why. The words just appeared in my head as I opened this journal. I came to this old whaling station in northern Alaska to be alone. That's what I told myself anyway. After everything that happened at the university, the scandal, the accusations of making up my research, I just wanted to disappear for a while. Funny how we lie to ourselves about our real reasons for doing things. It's only been 3 days, and I already know something is wrong here. Very wrong. Yesterday, I found these bone carvings in one of the storage rooms. Old Inuit work, probably decades old, based on how yellowed they are. But when I arranged them on the table, I nearly dropped my coffee. They spelled out my name, my full name, my birth date. The symbols are ancient, way older than me. How is that even possible? The radio has been acting weird too. Last night, I swear I heard fragments of conversations from different people. Names keep coming up. Vinny, Zeke, Gabriel, Bo. They were talking about their lives. One's a cop in Seattle, another's making moonshine in Kentucky. But here's the crazy part. They're all talking like it's 1962, same as me, same year, different places. The first night I spent here, I couldn't sleep. There was this sound, like whale songs, but coming from beneath the frozen ground. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I realized the rhythm matched my heartbeat exactly. How could anything know that? This morning, things got worse. I found papers scattered throughout the station, my thesis papers, but they weren't normal. The first pages were in my handwriting, but with each page, the writing changed, aged somehow, until the final pages weren't even in English anymore. They were in ancient Inuit script, but they were still my words, my research. The strangest thing happened an hour ago. I found a photograph tucked inside one of the books on the shelf. It was Michael, my son. My beautiful boy who never got to take a breath in this world. He was stillborn 20 years ago, but in this photo, God, in this photo, he's growing up. Different pictures showing him at 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, all the way to what it looked like now. Years I never got to see. Years that never happened. It's getting colder now, but it's not a normal cold. It's not the temperature dropping. It's like the absence of warmth. Not physical warmth, but the warmth of human connection. I can feel the emptiness of every relationship I've ever had, every person who ever loved me, all at once. My compass doesn't work anymore. When I tried to use it this morning, the needle pointed in 5 different directions at once. North seems to be everywhere and nowhere. Each direction feels like it's pulling me somewhere, specific, like there are 5 places I need to be all at once. Just got off the radio with Fairbanks. The operator sounded scared. He said there was a plane crash yesterday, my plane. They said I died on impact, but I'm still here, sending them transmissions, talking to them. They can hear my voice, but they say I'm dead. I don't know what's happening, but I know it's just beginning. I found something in the ice today, something that can't be real, but I saw it with my own eyes. Bodies, my bodies. I was digging in the permafrost behind the station, looking for anything that might explain what's happening, when my shovel hit something soft. At first, I thought it was just a patch of less frozen ground, but when I cleared away more snow and ice, I saw a face staring back at me. My face, the body looked like it had frozen to death. Blue lips, frost on the eyelashes, fingers curled up tight against the cold. But that wasn't the worst part. A few feet away, I found another one. Me again, but this one looked like it had starved to death. Skin hanging off bones, eyes sunken in. I kept digging, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the shovel. 3 more bodies, one with a bullet hole in the head, one that looked ancient, like it had died of old age, right there in the ice, and one that looked like someone had killed it. Killed me. I'm not sleeping much anymore. When I do, I have the strangest dreams. Last night, I dreamed I was a cop named Vinny, walking the streets of Seattle with a badge and gun. The night before, I was Zeke, making moonshine in Kentucky hills. I've also been Gabriel, a priest who did something terrible, and Bo, a man who hunts animals in Louisiana swamps. The weird thing is, when I wake up, I remember everything from these dreams, like they're my own memories. I can tell you the name of Vinny's partner on the force. I know exactly how Zeke makes his whiskey. I remember the faces of the people Gabriel has hurt. I can smell the swamp where Bo sets his traps. My journal is getting weird too. I'll write a sentence, then find myself writing it again, and again, and again. The words spiral around the page, making patterns I don't mean to make. Sometimes I flip back through earlier pages and find whole paragraphs repeated, over and over, but I don't remember writing them more than once. This morning, I saw someone outside the window, a young man, maybe 20 years old. He looked so familiar. When he turned to face me, I nearly fell over. It was Michael, my son, the son who died before he was born. But here he was, grown up, standing in the snow, watching me. When I ran outside, he was still there. He didn't disappear like I thought he would. "Why didn't you ever really cry for me, Dad?" he asked. His voice sounded just like mine. I couldn't answer. I just stood there shaking. "You know why you really left your job, don't you?" he said. "It wasn't because you made up research. It was because you found proof that you would die here in 1962. You found your own death, written down before it happened." He's right. God help me. He's right. I've been lying to myself all this time. The thing that looks like my son, I'm not sure it's really him, told me something else too. Every choice I make creates a new timeline where different people suffer. If I save myself, something bad happens to Vinny, Zeke, Gabriel, and Bo. But they're not just random people. They're me too. Different versions of me. I'm not what you think I am. The thing that looks like Michael said. I'm not some Arctic spirit or monster. I'm your guilt, your regret. Every bad choice you've ever made, given form across multiple timelines. I found myself carving into a piece of wood today. I wasn't even aware I was doing it. When I looked down, I'd carved coordinates, places I'd never been. Seattle, Kentucky, West Virginia, Arkansas. The places where the other versions of me exist. Time doesn't make sense anymore. I'm experiencing everything at once. My birth, my childhood, my marriage, Helen's pregnancy, Michael's death, my old age, my many deaths. All happening right now. All real, all true. I'm starting to think I've been trapped here a very long time. I heard a plane today. The sound of its engines cut through the endless howling wind, and for a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in what seems like forever. Hope. Maybe someone was coming to save me. The small aircraft landed on the flat stretch of ice about half a mile from the station. I ran out, waving my arms, shouting until my throat hurt. The pilot stepped out, bundled up against the cold. He waved back and started walking toward me. "Ted," he called. "Been looking all over for you." As he got closer, I could see his face better. He looked young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair peeking out from under his fur hat. He had my nose, my eye. "Jimmy Whitehorse," he said, holding out his hand. "Your research assistant." But I knew that wasn't true. Somehow, I knew exactly who he was. In another timeline, another world, Helen didn't lose our baby. Michael lived. He grew up. And in that world, he took his mother's maiden name, Whitehorse, and followed his father into Arctic research. My son, alive, standing right in front of me. "You're not real," I whispered. "You can't be." His face fell. "Dad, it's me. Mom sent me to find you." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to reach out and hug the son I never got to know. But if I did, if I accepted this reality, what happened to my guilt, my punishment? The guilt had become who I was. Without it, who would I be? "You're not my son," I said, backing away. "My son died before he was born." Something shifted in Jimmy's eyes, something old and knowing. "That's your choice then," he said quietly. I watched as he turned and walked back to his plane. I watched as he took off. I watched as the engine sputtered and failed over the mountains. I watched as the plane went down in a plume of black smoke. I killed him. By refusing to believe in him, I killed him. After that, things got worse. The thing that had been pretending to be Michael came back, but it didn't look like my son anymore. It looked like nothing I can properly describe. "You're not the first, Theodore," it said. "Every person who reads your complete journal becomes the next Ted. They start the cycle all over again." I looked down at my journal, at the words I'd been writing. Had someone else written these exact same words before? Will someone write them again? Are you writing them now? The creature showed me something else too. Vinny the cop, Zeke the moonshiner, Gabriel the priest. Bo, the hunter, they're not just connected to me. They are me. Different aspects of my broken mind, scattered across different lives. I'm not evil, the creature said. I'm more like a recycling system for guilt and regret. These emotions can poison time itself if left unchecked. I contained them. It offered me a choice. I could end the cycle by forgiving myself, by accepting that Michael's death wasn't my fault. But if I did that, everything I'd learned, everything future versions of me would learn, it would all be erased. The whaling station started to change around me. The walls seemed to flicker and shift. One moment I was seeing pine trees through the window, Seattle, Vinny's beat, then a coal mine, Kentucky, where Zeke lives, then concrete bunkers, Gabriel's West Virginia compound, then swampland, Bo's hunting grounds, all existing in the same place at the same time. There was another plane. This one landed safely. A man got out who looked familiar, but not in the way Jimmy had. This was Marcus, my brother. But when he got closer, I realized it wasn't Marcus at all. His nametag read David Kellerman. I'd never met anyone named David Kellerman in my life, but somehow I knew he was the one who would find my journal someday. He would be the one to tell my story to others. "Ted," he called out, "are you okay? Everyone's worried sick about you." But I couldn't answer him. I couldn't accept his help, because if I did, if I broke the pattern, I'd be free, but he would be trapped instead. I turned away. When I looked back, David was gone, just like Jimmy. Another death on my hands. The creature came to me again that night. It made me an offer. "You could become like me," it said. "You could be the one who decides who deserves punishment and who deserves forgiveness. You could be a god." I almost said yes, but then I realized something that scared me more than anything else that had happened. You're reading my thoughts right now, aren't you? As your eyes move across these words, you're connected to me. You're experiencing what I experienced. You're becoming part of it too. There's one more thing, one final truth I discovered. I've been dead since 1962. I died in that plane crash Fairbanks told me about. Everything since then, every moment, every horror, every choice, it's all been my death. One endless moment stretched into eternity. And now you're here with me, in this moment. Welcome to the cycle. I saw another plane today. This one was different, smaller. When it landed, a woman stepped out. She was bundled up against the cold, but I'd know her anywhere. Helen, my wife. She waved to me, and I ran to her, forgetting everything else. When I reached her, I could see she was pregnant. Her hand rested on her swollen belly protectively. "Ted," she said, smiling, "we've been so worried. Come home." I looked at her stomach, understanding immediately. In this timeline, we were still expecting Michael. He hadn't died yet. I could go back with her, try again, be there for the birth. I could have the life where my son lived. But something felt wrong. If I accepted this happiness, what would happen to all the other versions of me? To Vinny, Zeke, Gabriel, and Bo? To all the future Teds who would suffer through this cycle? Would they all be doomed so I could be happy? "You're not real," I said, the words tearing my heart out. "This isn't real." Helen's face crumpled. "Please, Ted, don't do this. We can start over." "I can't," I whispered. "I'm sorry." She turned away, walking back to her plane. I wanted to run after her, to tell her I'd changed my mind, but I stayed where I was. I watched her take off. I watched until her plane disappeared into the clouds. Then something strange happened. I tried to picture Michael's face, the face of the grown man who had visited me, but I couldn't remember it anymore. By rejecting the timeline where he lived, I'd lost even the memory of what he might have become. My journal pages look weird now. The words don't stay in neat lines anymore. They spiral around, repeat, break apart. Sometimes individual letters repeat over and over until they fill the whole page. It's like my thoughts are breaking down, coming apart at the seams. T T T T T T T T T T T T T T E E E E E D D D D D D D D E. I understand now. The other four stories, Vinny, Zeke, Gabriel, Bo, they're not happening alongside mine. They're happening inside my death. I'm not connected to them. I am them. I finally remember why I really left my university job. I found notes in Arctic ice, research notes written in my handwriting, but they were dated 50 years before I was born. The thing that isn't Michael came to me again. It showed me I have a choice. I can save every version of myself by accepting forgiveness. But to do that, I have to admit that Michael's death wasn't my fault. How can I do that? I was working late, I should have been home. Helen called, said something felt wrong, but I finished my paragraph before leaving. 19 minutes. The doctors said those 19 minutes might have made the difference. My guilt is who I am now. Without it, I'm nobody. I'm not feeding on your guilt, the creature told me. I'm protecting reality from it. People who can't forgive themselves create holes in time. Paradoxes. Can you feel it now? The cold, the isolation, the certainty that you deserve this. Of course you can. You're reading my words. You're becoming me. Michael came to me again, not as a baby, not as the young man I'd seen before, but as he would be now, middle-aged, a man with his whole life behind him. Let me take your place, Dad, he said. Let me carry this for you. I almost said yes. The temptation to be free of this endless cycle was so strong. But how could I do that to my son? How could I condemn him to this frozen hell so I could go free? No, I said, never. And something broke. The cycle that had been repeating for what felt like eternity shattered. I understood suddenly. Guilt is just love, with nowhere to go. That's what the entity had been trying to teach me all along. The Whaling Station walls fell away. I was everywhere at once. I was in Seattle with Vinny, in Kentucky with Zeke, in West Virginia with Gabriel, in Arkansas with Bo. We were all together, all the same person, all aspects of one consciousness that had been fractured by regret. I realize now that you've been making choices too. Every time you turned a page, every time you kept reading, you chose to experience my guilt with me. I see now what I have to do. I can't be whole again. Too much has happened, but I can accept that I'll always be broken, always be scattered across these 5 timelines, and in each one, I can find a kind of peace. I forgive myself, not by forgetting what I did wrong, not by pretending Michael's death wasn't connected to my choices, but by accepting that my love for him was real, even though his life was brief. The entity, the thing I thought was a monster, nods at my decision. I understand its purpose now. It recycles guilt, helps lost souls process their regret before it tears holes in the fabric of time itself. I'll stay, I tell it. I'll help others who get trapped here. I've become something new now. Not just Ted, not just the fragments of myself scattered across America. I'm a guide for others lost in their own regret. The spiral patterns in my journal have changed. They're not chaotic anymore. They form a perfect circle, and in the spaces between the letters, I can see words. You are forgiven. I know now that. I've been writing to you specifically, David Kellerman. I've seen you from within my death experience. I've watched you find my journal. I've watched you read it. I've watched you become part of the story. I'm not trapped anymore. I'm exactly where I need to be, and so are you. Close this journal now, or turn the page and begin your own journey. The choice has always been yours. My name is Ezekiel Morrison. Most folks just call me Zeke. I'm 54 years old, and I've spent most of my life breathing in coal dust in the mountains of eastern Kentucky. I used to be a mine foreman until the accident. Now, I make moonshine in what's left of Colton, a town that's mostly empty these days. I was going through my business ledger last night, and something strange caught my eye. There were entries I don't remember writing dated 1962, 1974, 1966, and 1971. What's stranger is they weren't about my moonshine business. One talked about whale oil prices from 1962, another about lumber from 1974. There was even one about church donations from 1966 and fur trading from 1971, but they were all in my handwriting. I must have been drinking more of my product than I thought. Speaking of strange, my old radio's been acting up too. I keep it on while I work, mostly for company in this empty town. Yesterday it started picking up signals I can't explain, market reports about those same things. Whale oil, lumber, church money, and fur trading. All at once, like the stations were playing over each other. I came to Colton to hide. That's the truth of it. After what happened at the mine, I couldn't face anyone. 27 men died that day. They said it was an accident, but I knew better. I was the one who decided we didn't need to replace those support beams right away. I was the one who ignored the warnings about the methane levels, all to save the company money, to make our quarterly numbers look better. Last week, I found an old newspaper in one of the abandoned houses. The headline was about some factory collapse in Chicago back in the 30s. As I read it, my blood went cold. The factory owner had skipped safety inspections to save money, like I did. Then I found more papers. Stories about train crashes, boat accidents, building collapses, all because somebody decided money was more important than people's lives. I've been thinking about leaving Colton. There are 4 roads out of this hollow, each leading to different places. But every time I pack up to go, I realize I'd have to leave something behind. My money, my equipment, my reputation, or my freedom. Can't seem to make that choice. The strangest thing happened last night. I was updating my ledger, writing down what I spent on sugar and corn for the next batch. Suddenly, my hand started moving on its own. I watched as it wrote out the names of every man who died in that mine. Next to each name, it wrote $1. Amount: John Wilcox, $457 saved. Tom Butler, $312 saved. My crew listed as acceptable losses. Then the temperature dropped so fast my breath clouded in front of me. The shadows in the corner started moving, gathering like coal dust in the air. They took shapes, something not quite human, made of darkness and what looked like dollar bills. It spoke with voices I recognized, the voices of my dead miners. "Hello, boss," it said in 27 voices at once. "Time to balance the books." I looked down at my bottles of moonshine sitting on the shelf and nearly fell over. Each label had changed. Instead of my usual Mountain Lightning, they now showed names and numbers. One had my name and said $247,356 current worth. Another had the name of the store clerk in town and showed $4.29 outstanding debt. How could my bottles know these things? As I backed away, the radio crackled again. It was broadcasting stock market crashes, the one from 29, Black Monday, in 87, and others I'd never heard of. But the weird thing was, every time it announced another crash, the room got colder, like the temperature was tied to the markets themselves. I don't know what's happening in this hollow, but I'm starting to think I didn't escape anything by coming here. Maybe I just walked right into something worse. I woke up this morning with a pounding headache. When I opened my eyes, I saw someone sitting at the foot of my bed. It was Danny, my son. But that's impossible. Danny died in the mine. "Morning, Pa," he said, looking just like he did that last day before the accident. "You don't look so good." I couldn't speak. My throat closed up tight. Danny had been the youngest worker in the mine, just 19. I hired him myself, even though his mama didn't want him down there. I told her it was good money, safer than most people thought. Another lie. "You know what's funny, Papa?" Danny said, picking at a loose thread on my blanket. "You always told me to get out of your way down in that mine. 'Don't slow me down, boy.' That's what you'd say. And then when the collapse started, I was in your way again, wasn't I?" The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. I had blamed him. Deep down, I had blamed my own son for slowing me down during the evacuation. Like it was his fault he died instead of mine. As Danny talked, the strangest thing happened. I started seeing through other eyes. For a moment, I was in Alaska, wearing fancy glasses, calculating how much money I could make from research that wasn't mine. Then I was in Washington, a cop skimming evidence. Next, I was counting church donation money in West Virginia, pocketing some for myself. Finally, I was in Arkansas, selling military supplies on the black market. All these lives felt real. All these greedy choices felt like my own. Daniel, whatever was pretending to be Danny, smiled at me. "The beast likes you, PA. Says you've got potential, says it can make you the richest man in Kentucky. Hell, the richest in America." "What beast?" I asked, finally finding my voice. "The one that's been feeding on you for years." Danny said, "It's offering you a deal. Every dollar you make from now on will come easy, but each one means someone else suffers. Someone like me, or the boys in the mine. Someone who works hard and gets nothing but pain. Did it sound fair to you, Pa?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I'd never make that deal. But the truth was, I already had. Every corner I cut at the mine, every safety measure I skipped, every bonus I took while denying raises, I'd been making that deal my whole life. Then Danny started coughing. Not just any cough. The deep, wet, awful cough I'd heard too many times before. Black lung. Coal dust in the lungs that slowly kills a man. "Funny thing, Pa," Danny wheezed between coughs. "I didn't die in the collapse. Not right away, remember? I was trapped but alive when they pulled me out. It was the black lung that got me 3 months later. The black lung you could have prevented if you'd spent money on proper ventilation instead of pocketing it." I covered my ears, but I could still hear him coughing. When I looked up, money was everywhere. dollar bills crawling across the floor, like insects, coins rolling uphill and multiplying like they were breeding, banknotes floating in the air and whispering things I couldn't quite hear. The shadow thing from last night formed again, bigger this time. It spoke, not with the miners' voices now, but with a single voice that seemed to come from everywhere. "I'm not your enemy, Zeke," it said. "I'm just nature. The nature of the system you helped build when people decide other people are worth less than money. I'm what grows in the empty space where their souls used to be." My ledger was on the table across the room. It flipped open by itself, pages turning wildly until it stopped. New writing appeared on the page. "Your boots, 2 underpaid factory workers in Vietnam. Your radio, 5 children mining rare metals in Congo. Your moonshine still, 3 exploited metal workers in Pennsylvania." The names of the miners were disappearing from the pages, replaced by dollar amounts. Their humanity erased, reduced to numbers in columns. I realized then that I wasn't just facing judgment from this ... thing. I was facing judgment from every person who ever worked themselves to death for poor pay, while people like me got rich. Every child in a factory, every miner with black lung, every worker crushed or burned or poisoned so someone else could save a buck. Outside my window, Colton was changing. One minute it looked normal. The next I could see Wall Street skyscrapers rising behind the trees. Then factories with belching smokestacks. Then endless fields with stooped workers harvesting crops. Like the hollow was everywhere at once. Or maybe everywhere was here in the hollow. I didn't run. Where could I run to? This thing, this beast, had been with me my whole life. I just hadn't seen it until now. There was a knock at my door the next morning. I wasn't sure if I should answer it. After everything I'd seen, who knew what might be waiting for me? But the knocking wouldn't stop, so I finally opened the door. A man stood there, about 30 years old, wearing a clean button-up shirt and holding a briefcase. For a second, I thought he was a revenue agent coming to bust me for my moonshine. Then I looked at his face. "Danny," I whispered. But this wasn't the young Danny who'd died. This was Danny grown up, with lines around his eyes and grey touching his temples. A Danny who had somehow lived. "Hello, Pa," he said, and his voice was deeper than I remembered. "May I come in?" I stepped back, letting him into my shabby little house. He looked around with sad eyes. "So this is where you ended up," he said. "Hiding away, making moonshine. How are you here?" I asked. You died." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "In one timeline, yes. In this one, you made a different choice. You spent the money on better supports for the mine, on better air filters. You chose the safety of your workers over profit. I lived PA. I grew up. I got married. I have kids of my own now. My heart felt like it might burst." "Then why are you here?" "To give you a choice," he said. "You can accept that I survived, that all the miners survived. You can have a life with grandchildren and Sunday dinners and birthdays. But to accept that, you have to accept that your guilt or gooey, that's made you rich these past years, was never real. Or you can keep your wealth and your guilt. But if you do, you'll watch me die again. Right here, right now." As he spoke, he started coughing. That same black lung cough from before. I wanted both. I wanted my son alive and my money. Why couldn't I have both? The unfairness of it made me angry. "This isn't real," I said. "None of this is real. You're just in my head." Daniel, or whatever it was, kept coughing. "Choose PA." I looked at my still, at my supplies, at the wads of cash hidden around the cabin. I'd made good money these past years, more than I ever made at the mine. "I choose ... My voice caught. "I choose what I have now." Danny nodded, like he expected that answer. Then he collapsed to the floor, coughing up black phlegm, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. I watched my son die for the second time, and I did nothing. When it was over, his body disappeared like smoke. I sat down hard on my chair, shaking. The beast formed again in the corner of the room. "You've been feeding me for decades, Zeke," it said. "Every time you chose money over people, every time you looked away from suffering you could have prevented, I've been guiding your hand, whispering in your ear." The room shifted around me. My still transformed into a gleaming laboratory with fancy equipment. Then it became a police evidence room filled with confiscated goods. Next, a church basement with donation boxes. Finally, a military storage room packed with weapons and supplies. Each time, I saw myself working there, making money, feeding the beast. "What are you?" I asked. I'm the hunger, it said. Not capitalism itself, that's just a system. I'm the hunger that drives it. The endless need for more. No matter the cost to others, it moved closer. You could destroy me, Zeke. Give away everything you own. Live simply. Value human life over profit. But if you did, the economy would crash. Millions would suffer. The hunger has grown too big to kill without consequences. Danny appeared again, but not alone this time. With him were children I'd never seen before, hundreds of them, all pale and sickly. These are all the children who died in mines, factories, and sweatshops, Danny said. All because someone like you decided saving money was more important than saving them. I realized something terrible then. It wasn't just me. Everyone who buys the cheapest clothes without asking who made them and how they were treated. Everyone who wants cheap gas without caring about the land destroyed to get a tea. Everyone who demands fast shipping without thinking about the warehouse. Workers running themselves ragged. We all feed the beast. I can make you powerful, Zeke, the beast said. You can decide who prospers and who suffers. You can control the global economy. Just keep feeding me. Papers appeared on my table, bank statements, receipts, financial reports. But they weren't mine. They had the names of people I'd never met, showing purchases they'd made and the suffering each purchase caused. It was like seeing the hidden cost of everything. Then I understood the final, terrible truth. I hadn't escaped the mine accident. I had died there with my crew. Everything since the moonshine operation, the Hollow, all of it was some kind of purgatory. A place where I had to face what I'd done, what I'd been a part of. The beast wasn't haunting me. I was haunting myself. The next day, a truck pulled up outside my cabin. 5 men got out, all wearing DeWitt breakers. They were led by a tall man with a grey beard and familiar eyes, my brother, Jim. Jim had always been the good one between us. While I climbed the company ladder at the mine, he organized unions and fought for worker safety. We hadn't spoken in years, not since I fired him for stirring up trouble when he reported safety violations. Zeke, he said, when I opened the door, we've come to shut down your operation. The other agents moved past me, searching the cabin for my moonshine, but Jim just stood there, looking sad. You know, I said, I could save you. I could tell you the truth about the mine, about how I cut corners, about how I falsified safety reports. It would clear your name. Jim had been blamed for some of the violations, accused of negligence when he was actually trying to prevent disaster. Would you really do that? Jim asked. Admit that worker safety matters more than profit. The beast appeared behind Jim, watching me with hungry eyes. I knew what it wanted me to say. Keep quiet. Protect my reputation. Let Jim take the blame, like he had before. But I was tired of feeding the beast. Yes, I said. I'll tell the truth. I'll sign a confession. The accident was my fault, not yours. Jim smiled, and for a moment, I felt lighter than I had in years. But then he clutched his chest and fell to his knees. The other agents didn't notice. They seemed frozen in place. Too late, brother, Jim gasped. The beast has grown too strong. It's been feeding for too long. On you, on me, on everyone. He collapsed, and like Danny, his body faded away. My ledger flew open again, pages flipping wildly before stopping. New writing appeared. Your smartphone, 3.7 dead miners. Your cheap cloth, 12.3 sweatshop workers. Your convenient food, 47.2 migrant farm workers. But this time, the writing wasn't addressing me. It was addressing ... someone else. Someone reading about me. Someone whose life was built on the same system that had corrupted mine. The cabin walls disappeared. I found myself in an enormous room that looked like a stock exchange. But instead of companies, the boards showed names. Human names. Their values rising and falling. In the room with me were 4 other people: a scientist, a police officer, a preacher, and a military contractor. They looked as confused as I felt. We're all the same, I said to them. We all fed the beast. In that moment, I truly understood what my workers had been to me. Not just employees, not just numbers on a page. They were people who trusted me with their lives. Fathers, sons, brothers, people with dreams and fears. People I betrayed for money. There was a blinding flash, and Ruth, Danny's mother, my wife, stood before me. She was younger than I remembered, her belly swollen with pregnancy. With Danny, "You can come home, Zeke," she said. "We can start over. Before the mine, before the accident, before all of it." I wanted that more than anything. To go back, to hold Ruth again, to see Danny born, to make different choices. But if I did, I would forget. I would forget the true cost of greed. I would forget the faces of the men who died because of me. And without that memory, I might make the same choices all over again. I can't, I said, my voice breaking. I need to remember. Ruth nodded, like she understood, like she was proud of me. Then she was gone, but something had changed. The money in my pockets felt different, lighter somehow. I pulled out a dollar bill and watched in amazement as it turned into a seed, then bloomed into a flower. All around me, money was transforming, not dissipating, from something that hurt to something that healed. This is your purpose now, the beast said, but its voice was different, calmer, to be the eternal accountant, to ensure every economic decision is weighed against its human cost. The ledger in my hands changed. The numbers and words found a balance, forming equations I somehow understood, equations that solved for human happiness instead of profit. The final page had a message addressed to someone named David Kellerman. The true cost of these stories. 3 years of research, 142 interviews with families of industrial accident victims, 56 nights without sleep, 1 divorce, and countless tears. Was it worth it? Only if it changes something. I understood then. I was part of a story being told to teach something important. My whole perspective shifted. I saw the world as it truly was, a marketplace where every transaction affected real people. I saw the invisible threads connecting buyers to makers, consumers to workers. Every dollar spent was a vote for what kind of world we wanted. The last pages of my ledger turned blank except for a single line. How will you spend tomorrow? Below it appeared a list of everyday choices and their true costs. Coffee, beans picked by workers, making $2 a day t-shirt made by children, working 14-hour shifts, smartphone contains minerals, mined by forced labor, fast shipping, warehouse workers denied bathroom breaks. But beside each was an alternative, fair trade coffee, workers paid living wages, ethically made clothes, adult workers with benefits, responsibly sourced electronics, mining conditions monitored, standard shipping, reasonable worker expectations. I realized I had become something new. Not just Zeke the mine foreman or Zeke the moon. I had become a presence in the economy itself, a consciousness embedded in every transaction. When a CEO considered cutting safety to boost profits, they would feel me watching. When a consumer reached for the cheapest option without considering why it was so cheap, they would hesitate, feeling my gentle nudge toward the ethical choice. The hollow around me faded, but I didn't. My consciousness spread, becoming part of the economic forces that shape human lives, not controlling them, reminding people that every dollar is a moral choice. And somewhere, far away, I sensed someone reading about me. Someone whose bank account had just made a small, anonymous donation to a workers' safety organization without their knowledge. Someone who would wake up tomorrow facing the same choices I had faced, to value money over people, or to find a better way. Someone who would see the final message in my ledger. Your economic impact statement has been calculated. How will you spend tomorrow? My name is Vincent Castellano. Everyone calls me Vinny. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a detective with the Seattle Police Department. At least I was, until everything went to hell. Case file number 1962. That's what I wrote at the top of my report. Just a number, just another case. But now I know it wasn't random at all. I needed to disappear for a while. Internal affairs was breathing down my neck again. Some punk kid from the projects claimed I used excessive force during an arrest. Please, the kid was resisting. What was I supposed to do? Let him go? That's not how I operate. That's not how my father taught me. So I called in some favors, took some vacation time, and headed out to my Uncle Tony's old logging camp in the Olympic Peninsula. The place had been abandoned for years, but it still had power and running water. More importantly, it had no people, no questions, no accusations. The drive out there was peaceful, too peaceful. My radio kept picking up weird signals, police chatter that didn't make sense, something about an Arctic expedition from 1962, then a mining accident from 68, a bridge collapse in 66, and missing persons in Arkansas from 71. I figured it was just bad reception in the mountains. When I got to the camp, everything was quiet, eerily quiet. No birds singing, no wind in the trees. Just ... nothing. I unloaded my gear and checked out the main cabin. It was dusty but intact. My uncle's old stuff was still there. Logbooks, equipment, photos on the wall. That's when I found it. A newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. The headline read, "Logging protest turns deadly. Native activist dies in confrontation." My uncle's name was all over the article. Apparently, he'd gotten into a fight with some environmental activist and pushed him. The guy fell, hit his head on a rock, and died instantly. My uncle claimed self-defense, but nobody believed him. He lost the camp, lost his reputation, lost everything. I stared at that article for a long time. It was too familiar, too close to home. How many times had I pushed too hard during an arrest? How many accidents had I been involved in? That night, I couldn't sleep. The silence was suffocating. Around 3 a.m., I heard something outside, a strange sound, like wings beating against the air. I grabbed my gun and flashlight and stepped onto the porch. That's when I saw it for the first time. It stood nearly 8 feet tall at the edge of the clearing, massive bat-like wings stretched from its shoulders. Its face was ... wrong, like a bat, but with human features twisted into it. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. I raised my gun, but before I could fire, it opened its mouth and screamed. But it wasn't just a scream. It was voices, human voices, voices I recognized. "Please, officer, I wasn't doing nothing. I can't breathe, man. My kids are watching. Please." Every person I'd ever roughed up, every suspect who'd resisted arrest, every voice I'd ignored when they begged me to stop. I dropped my flashlight and covered my ears, but the voices kept coming. Names, dates, badge numbers, every incident, report I'd falsified, every complaint I'd buried. When I looked up again, the thing was gone. But something was wrong with the forest. The paths leading away from the cabin seemed ... different. I could see 5 distinct trails, but each one felt wrong somehow, like they led to places that shouldn't exist. Back inside, I tried to write down what I'd seen in my case notes, but when I looked at the paper, the margins were filled with the same word repeated over and over. Guilty, 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 and it wasn't my handwriting. It was Maria Santos, the 12-year-old girl who'd been caught in the crossfire during a drug raid gone wrong. My first accident. I slammed the notebook shut and went to check the security cameras my uncle had installed years ago. They still worked, somehow, but what they showed made no sense. The monitors didn't show the forest outside. They showed a living room, with a couch and a TV, and someone sitting there, reading these exact words, reading about me. That's when the temperature in the cabin suddenly plummeted. The thermometer by the door dropped to exactly 42 degrees. I remembered that temperature. It was 42 degrees the night Maria died. I'd never told anyone that, never put it in any report. But something in these woods knew. Something in these woods knew everything. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw things that didn't make sense. I saw myself as other people. A man named Ted in the Arctic, shivering as he wrote in his journal. A guy called Zeke in some dark mine, hungry and afraid. A priest named Gabriel, praying in an empty church. A soldier named Bo standing guard in a swamp. But I wasn't just seeing them. I was them. I felt Ted's guilt about something he'd covered up. I felt Zeke's hunger for money and power. I felt Gabriel's lost faith and Bo's need to protect something that wasn't worth protecting. When morning finally came, I made a pot of coffee with shaking hands. The coffee maker sputtered and hissed like it was angry at me. "They're all like you," a voice whispered from the kitchen radio. "All the same, different times, different places, same sin." I smashed the radio with the butt of my gun. The pieces scattered across the floor, but the voice continued. Ted hid evidence. Zeke poisoned water for profit. Gabriel turned away the needy. Bo followed orders he knew were wrong. "Shut up," I screamed, kicking the broken radio across the room. "And you, Vinny, what did you do?" I ran outside, desperate for fresh air. The morning was foggy and cold. The trees seemed closer than they had been yesterday, like they'd crept up on the cabin during the night. That's when I saw her, a small figure standing at the edge of the clearing. A girl in a pink sweater with a bullet hole in her chest. "Maria Santos, why didn't you come to my funeral, Officer Castellano?" she asked. Her voice was soft, like falling leaves. "You're not real," I said, my own voice barely a whisper. "I waited for you. My family waited too. They wanted to hear you say, 'Sorry, I backed away.'" You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It wasn't my fault. Maria took a step forward. I didn't die right away, you know. The bullet didn't kill me. My back hit the cabin wall. What are you talking about? You died at the scene. She shook her head slowly. That's what you wrote in your report. But I was alive when the ambulance came. I died 3 days later from an infection because the doctors didn't know where the bullet fragments were. You never told them. My legs gave out and I slid down the wall until I was sitting in the dirt. She was right. I'd changed the report. Said she was dead when we found her. It was easier that way. Cliff. Maria tilted her head, looking at me with sad eyes. I can take it all away, Vinny. All the memories of the people you've hurt. You won't have to feel bad anymore. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. You can do that. Yes, but there's a price. If you forget the pain you caused, you'll also forget how to care about anyone but yourself. I almost said yes. God help me. I almost said yes. Is that what you want, Vinny? To forget me completely? Before I could answer, the air around us filled with sounds, not just voices this time, but thoughts. The worried thoughts of my partner, wondering if I was okay. The angry thoughts of the last guy I arrested. The sad thoughts of Maria's mother still missing her daughter years later. Make it stop, I begged. We can't make it stop, Maria said. But her voice was different now, deeper, echoing. The Bat-Squatch stood where she had been, its massive wings blocking out the morning light. We are not your punishment, Vincent Castellano. We are your rehabilitation. What are you talking about? Every corrupt authority figure must face what they've done, must feel what they've caused. Some break, some change, all serve. The creature gestured to the forest with one clawed hand. Look around you. Every Bat-Squatch was once like you. A badge, a gun, a mistake, a lie. I looked at my case files scattered on the porch where I'd left them. The pages were different now. The words, addressed someone else. You've watched injustice happen. They read, you've done nothing. You're complicit. The words weren't meant for me. They were meant for whoever was reading about me. My head felt like it was splitting open. The world around me began to crack and break apart like shattered glass. The trees, the cabin, the sky, all breaking into jagged pieces. And then I understood. I wasn't just being watched by this creature. I was being watched by you. I must have passed out. When I woke up, I was back inside the cabin, lying on the old couch. For a moment, I thought maybe it had all been a bad dream. Then I heard a car pulling up outside. I grabbed my gun and moved to the window. A police cruiser had parked in front of the cabin. The door opened, and a man in a Seattle PD uniform stepped out. Roy Sullivan, my partner for the last 5 years. Vinny, he called out. You in there? Just want to talk, buddy. I opened the door slowly, keeping my gun hidden behind my back. Roy, what are you doing here? But as Roy walked closer, I could tell something was wrong. His face kept shifting. Sometimes he looked like Roy, but other times he looked like Maria. I whispered, Roy. Maria smiled sadly. In another life, I didn't die, Vinny. In another life, I grew up, became a cop like you, tried to be better than you. I shook my head. That's not possible. Everything is possible here. Roy, Maria said, this is where all possibilities meet, where all choices face their consequences. Roy, Maria held out a hand. You can save me, Vinny. You can choose to accept my forgiveness. If you do, I live. I become Officer Maria Santos for real. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But something inside me couldn't accept it. I didn't deserve forgiveness. I deserved punishment. I can't, I said. Roy, Maria's face crumpled in pain. A dark stain spread across the uniform shirt, infection spreading, just like it had with the real Maria in the hospital. Roy, Maria fell to the ground, gasping. You choose your guilt over my life. Roy, Maria whispered. Again, and then Roy, Maria was gone. Just gone, like they'd never been there at all. I stumbled back into the cabin, my mind racing. The walls seemed to pulse like they were breathing. The floor didn't feel solid anymore. That's when I noticed my reflection in the bathroom mirror. But it wasn't me looking back. It was the Bat-Squatch. I raised my hand. The creature in the mirror raised its wing. I touched my face. The creature touched its snout. No, I said. No, that's not possible. It's always been you. My reflection said in a voice that was mine but not mine. Every corrupt cop you've ever hunted down was just another version of yourself. I ran from the mirror. But the cabin had changed. One door led to an ice field, another opened onto a third showed the ruins of an old church. The fourth revealed a murky swamp. The cabin wasn't just in the woods anymore. It was everywhere at once. "What is this place?" I shouted. "What's happening to me?" The air thickened, and the bats appeared again. This time, I could see parts of myself in it. My eyes, my hands turned to claws. "This is the cosmic courthouse," it said, "where those who abuse their authority face true justice." "I was just doing my job," I said weakly. "Your job was to protect and serve," the Bat-Squatch said, "not to hurt and hide." It spread its massive wings. "Join us, Vincent. Become part of the collective. Help us find others like you. Help us balance the scales. And if I refuse, then you stay here, alone with your guilt forever." I laughed bitterly. "Some choice. One more thing," the Bat-Squatch said. "Some of those you hurt, some of them deserved it. Can you accept that? Can you accept that sometimes your violence served justice, even if your methods were wrong?" Before I could answer, there was another sound outside. A woman's voice calling my name. I looked out the window and saw Lisa, not my partner, not a ghost, but a young woman in her 20s with my eyes and my mother's smile. "Dad," she called. "Dad." I didn't have any children. I'd never even been married. I stepped outside. "Who are you?" "I'm Lisa," she said. "Your daughter. From a timeline where you quit the force after Maria died, where you became a social worker instead, where you helped kids like her instead of hurting them." She held out her hand. "Come home, Dad. It's not too late to change." I wanted to believe her. I reached for her hand, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't accept that redemption had been possible all along. That would mean I'd chosen to stay corrupt, that I'd chosen to keep hurting people when I could have stopped. Lisa's face fell. "Oh, Dad," she whispered, and then she began to fade, like mist in sunlight. "No, wait," I cried, but it was too late. She was gone. I fell to my knees in the dirt, sobbing. Around me, the forest seemed to watch and judge. Every tree, every rock, every blade of grass was part of a vast jury, and behind them all, unseen but felt, was you, reading these words, judging me too. The Bat-Squatch loomed over. "Me, the collective can give you power. Vincent, power to punish those like you. Every corrupt cop, every dirty judge, every priest who looked the other way, every soldier who followed immoral orders." "I don't want to punish anyone," I said. "I'm tired of hurting people." "Then what do you want?" I looked up at the creature, at my own distorted reflection. "I want to understand why I became this way." The Bat-Squatch nodded slowly. "Then let me show you the truth." It touched a claw to my forehead, and suddenly I knew I'd been dead since that first night. Since Maria. Everything since then, my career, my cases, this cabin, had all been a kind of purgatory. A lesson designed to teach me what I'd refused to learn in life. Empathy. I don't know how long I sat there in the dirt, trying to accept that I was dead, that I had been dead for years, that everything I thought was real was just a lesson I needed to learn. The sound of another car pulled me back to the present, or whatever this was. Not a police cruiser this time. An old station wagon, rusted around the edges. A man got out, tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick moustache going grey at the edges. My father. He was wearing his old SWAT uniform, the one he'd worn for 20 years before retiring, the one he'd been so proud of, the one he'd wanted me to wear someday. "Junior," he called out, using the nickname I'd always hated. "What the hell are you doing out here? The whole department's looking for you." I stood up slowly. "Dad, how did you find me?" He tapped the side of his nose. "I know all your hiding spots, always have." As he came closer, I could see something was off about him too. His eyes were harder than I remembered. His uniform was stained with something dark. "You need to come home, son," he said. "We'll fix this mess. We always do." I knew what he meant. He'd fixed things for me before, made complaints disappear, talked to the right people, pulled the right strings. He'd taught me that the badge meant we were above the rules, not bound by them. "No," I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. "No more fixing things, Dad." He frowned. "Don't be stupid, Junior. You think those people matter, the ones complaining about you. They're nothing. We're the thin blue line. We're what stands between order and chaos." "Is that what you told yourself when you planted evidence on Marcus Johnson?" I asked. The words came from nowhere, but somehow I knew they were true. "Or when you beat that homeless guy to death in '89. My father's face darkened. Watch your mouth, boy. You taught me everything, Dad. Every bad habit, every dirty trick. You made me what I am. I took a step toward him, and what I am is a monster, just like you. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Junior, you don't know what you're saying. I'm saying I'm placing you under arrest, I said, reaching for the handcuffs on my belt. For all of it, every crime you committed wearing that badge. You can't arrest me. He laughed, but it was a nervous sound. I'm your father. No, I said. You're a criminal, and I'm a cop. As I said those words, and meant them, really meant them for the first time, my father began to change. His uniform grew darker with stains. His face aged decades in seconds. His back bent under the weight of all his sins. What did you do to me? He gasped, falling to his knees. I told the truth, I said. For once in my life, he collapsed completely, his body seeming to dissolve into the ground like it was being absorbed. And then he was gone too. I turned around and found myself in a vast, empty space. No cabin, number, forest, just whiteness stretching in all directions. And I wasn't alone. 4 other people stood with me in a circle. A thin man in Arctic gear, a businessman in a dirty suit, a priest with a torn collar, a soldier with haunted eyes. Ted, Zeke, Gabriel, Bo, we're all the same person, Ted said. Different aspects of the same consciousness, different lessons about power and how we used it, Zeke added. Different paths to the same truth, Gabriel said. Different ways we failed those who trusted us, Bo finished. I looked down at my hands. They were clean for the first time in years. No blood, no dirt, no guilt. I understand now, I said. It's not about punishment, it's about acknowledgement. My victim's pain was real, whether I meant to hurt them or not. The space around us shifted, and Maria appeared again, but not as the child I'd killed, or the cop who died in my arms. She was a woman now, maybe 30, with laugh lines around her eyes and a wedding ring on her finger. Vinny, she said warmly, I've been waiting for you to figure it out. In this version of reality, we had met as adults, fallen in love, gotten married. She held out her hand. Come home. We can be happy together. It was everything I could have wanted. A life without guilt. A life with love and purpose. But accepting this happiness would mean erasing the lesson I'd learned from her death. It would mean forgetting the pain I'd caused. I can't, I said, my heart breaking all over again. I need to remember what happened. I need to carry that with me. Maria smiled sadly. That's the right answer. And as she faded away this time, I didn't feel loss. I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Empathy. Real, genuine empathy. The space around us changed again. The chaotic sounds that had been tormenting me reorganized into a harmony. The guilt that had been crushing me became something else. A tool, a sense that could detect injustice. What happens now? I asked. The others would join the collective, Ted said. But not as punishers, as healers, Zeke explained. We help others like us find their way back, Gabriel added. We break the cycle, Bo finished. The whiteness around us took shape, forming a massive courthouse. People from every time period filled the benches. Judges, cops, soldiers, teachers, parents, politicians, anyone who had ever held power over others. This is where all authority figures come eventually, Ted explained, to face judgment for how they used their power. But judgment without mercy is just vengeance, I said, understanding at last. I turned and looked directly at you, the one reading these words. What about you? I asked. How have you used your power? What would we find if we opened your case file? In my hand appeared a blank warrant with your name on it. The choice is yours, I said. Judgment or mercy. I tore the warrant in half. I choose mercy, I said. For you, for myself, for everyone. And with those words, I became something new. Not a corrupt cop, not a monster, not even a bat squatch. I became a defender, a protector of those who face corrupt authority. My consciousness spread out, becoming part of every badge, every gun, every symbol of power, a whisper in the ear of those tempted to abuse their position. Remember Vinny, remember Maria, remember the price of corruption. My case file is closed now, but yours, yours, is just beginning. How will you plead? The remaining pages of the file appear blank at first, but as you continue to look at them, they slowly begin to fill with familiar details. Details of your own life, details of your own moral choices. My name is Gabriel Reyes. I was a priest once, before everything changed, before I saw what I wasn't supposed to see. It started with my prayer book. I was flipping through it one night in the old TNT bunkers outside Point Pleasant, where I'd been hiding for weeks. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere far from the church's questions about my faith, somewhere I could sort through the doubts eating away at me since the Vatican II reforms. That's when I noticed something wrong with my prayer book. The mass schedules were ... impossible. Arctic Memorial Service 1962, Seattle Police Chaplain 1974, Kentucky Mining Blessing 1968, Arkansas Baptism 1971. I blinked hard, but the words didn't change. Some of these dates hadn't even happened yet. Others were places I'd never been. I closed the book, my hands shaking. When I opened it again to say my evening prayers, something stranger happened. As I whispered the familiar words, I heard responses coming back to me, not in Latin or English, but in languages I didn't understand. Inuktitut phrases mixed with police radio codes, mining terminology, and what sounded like Cajun French. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty concrete bunker. No answer came, just a faint whisper of those mysterious responses fading away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about when my faith first began to crack. It wasn't some grand philosophical question that broke me. It was simpler than that, more terrible. I'd spent years praying for God to stop atrocities, wars, genocides, children suffering, and slowly I realized the awful truth. God was there for all of it, watching and doing nothing. The next morning, I found papers scattered across the bunker, floor notes about other religious leaders throughout history who lost their faith. But these weren't just stories of doubt. They described something else, a system, a cosmic jury, where those who question divine justice become its judges. The bunker felt different that day. The exits weren't leading where they should. Each doorway seemed to open to somewhere else entirely. An Arctic research station, a Seattle police precinct, a Kentucky coal mine, a small Arkansas church. Each path demanding I leave behind another piece of my faith to pass through. I grabbed my Bible for comfort, but the pages had changed overnight. The verses I'd memorized, the ones that had once given me strength, were being rewritten before my eyes. "The Lord is my shepherd" became "the Lord watched as the wolves came." Every comforting passage replaced with cold documentation of prayers that went unanswered, of suffering that continued while God remained silent. That's when I saw it for the first time, standing in the doorway, not quite a man, but something with the shape of a man. Wings spread wide behind it, but they weren't feathered wings. They were like screens, displaying millions of tiny moving images. As I looked closer, I realized what they were showing. Every prayer that had ever gone unanswered, every plea for help that met only silence. The Mothman. That's what the locals called it. But I knew it was something else, something older. A church bulletin appeared on the table beside me. I picked it up with trembling hands. It listed services for the coming week, including a funeral mass. Under the spiritually dead, I saw my own name, and below it, something more disturbing, the names of people I didn't know. One of them might have been yours. Time began to shift. Around me, I wasn't just in the bunker anymore. I was in every church service throughout history simultaneously. I heard the prayers of Roman Christians hiding from persecution. I heard medieval monks chanting in stone monasteries. I heard modern worshippers in megachurches with their hands raised, all of them asking, pleading, begging for divine intervention. That never came. And I realized I wasn't hiding from the church's investigation anymore. I was hiding from a much more terrible truth. The next morning, if it was morning at all, I saw him. Not the Mothman this time, but Christ himself. He stood in the center of the bunker, his hands showing the marks of crucifixion, his eyes full of questions. "Gabriel," he said, and his voice was both gentle and heavy with sadness. "Why did you stop believing in divine love when you faced divine justice?" I couldn't answer. How could I explain that seeing so much suffering had broken something in me, that every unanswered prayer had chipped away at my faith until there was nothing left? As I looked at him, something strange happened. I wasn't just myself anymore. I could feel other lives running through me like electric currents. I was Ted, a professor who used his knowledge to mock believers. I was Vinny, a priest who took church money to buy himself nice things. I was Zeke, who pretended to be holy while growing rich off his followers. I was Bo, who hurt others and said God told him to do it. Each of them had used faith as an excuse for terrible things. "I can give you back your faith," Christ said, holding out his hand to me. "I can make you forget all the bad things you've seen. You can be happy again, Gabriel. You can believe again." The offer hit me like a punch to the stomach. To believe again, to feel that certainty, that comfort. But the price was forgetting all the suffering I'd witnessed, forgetting all the people who had prayed for help and received silence. "Your loss of faith wasn't a failure," Christ said, his voice softer now. "It was growth. You stopped believing in a God who would let children suffer. You chose compassion over blind faith." Around us, the air began to change. The prayers I'd heard before were taking shape, becoming visible like smoke or mist. But they weren't joyful prayers of thanks. They were desperate pleas for help that had gone unanswered. A mother begging for her sick child to live. A man trapped in rubble after an earthquake. Villagers watching soldiers approach their homes. The Mothman appeared again, standing beside Christ. They were different and yet somehow the same. "I'm not evil," the Mothman said, its voice like rustling wings. "I'm the part of God that watches suffering without stopping it. I must exist because humans must be free to choose, even to choose evil. Without that freedom, love means nothing." Church bulletins began appearing again, but these were different. They contained prayer requests that felt strangely familiar, things that had happened in my life, things that might have happened in yours, accidents, illnesses, heartbreaks, and beside each one, the same question: why do you still believe in divine justice? My Bible kept changing, the language shifting from prayers to legal terms, the case of humanity versus divinity, evidence of negligence, testimony of witnesses to divine absence. It was as if God himself was on trial. And then I understood what was happening. I wasn't just questioning God anymore. I was serving as God's defense attorney in a cosmic trial where divine justice itself was being judged. The bunker walls fell away. We weren't in a military storage facility anymore. We were simultaneously in a church, a courtroom, and some kind of vast observatory where the weight of prayers and divine responses were being measured on cosmic scales. I stood in the center of it all, no longer certain of anything except the crushing weight of responsibility. If God was on trial, and I was his defender, what could I possibly say in his defense? How could anyone justify the suffering of innocence? The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. The lights from the Mothman's wings reflected in the tears on Christ's face. Something was coming, a decision, a verdict, and I wasn't ready. A knock at the bunker door made me jump. When I opened it, my heart stopped. "Gabe, why are you looking at me like that?" It was Mark, my younger brother, the brother who died 12 years ago in a car crash while I was saying evening mass. The accident I had prayed wouldn't happen when I felt that strange chill during communion. "You're not real," I whispered. "I'm as real as anything else here," Mark said, stepping inside. He looked exactly as he had that day, 23 years old, wearing his favorite blue jacket. "They sent me to help you understand." "Understand? What?" "Your choice." Mark sat down on one of the bunker chairs. "You can accept that my death served some greater purpose, that God had a plan. If you do, your faith comes back. Or you can stick to what you really believe, that God failed me, that my death was pointless. But if you choose that, you have to watch me die again." My throat closed up. "That's cruel." "That's the test," Mark said simply. I looked at my brother, the brother I'd missed every day for 12 years, the chance to believe again, to feel God's presence, but at the cost of accepting that Mark's death was somehow necessary. "I can't," I finally said. "I can't pretend your death had some divine purpose. It was senseless, cruel, wrong." Mark smiled sadly, then he clutched his chest, blood blooming across his shirt, the same injuries from the crash. He fell, and I tried to catch him, but he disappeared before he hit the floor. I was alone again, but something had changed. I caught my reflection in a puddle of water on the bunker floor, and saw the Mothman looking back at me. "You've been me all along," the reflection said. "Every tragedy you witnessed, every prayer you heard go unanswered, that was you in your role as cosmic witness." The bunker walls became transparent. I could see through them to other places, the Arctic Station, the Seattle Precinct, the Kentucky Mine, the Arkansas Church. They weren't just places I might go. They were observation posts, places where divine justice was being monitored across all of time. A tall figure approached me, neither Christ nor the Mothman, but something older, something that existed before both. Everyone who loses faith becomes a juror, it explained. Everyone who questions divine justice joins the cosmic trial. What happens if God is found guilty? I asked. All suffering ends, the figure said. But so does all love, all joy, all meaning. Creation itself unravels. And if God is found innocent, then nothing changes. Suffering continues. Divine silence remains. Before I could respond, another man appeared, an older priest with my face, my eyes, but wearing a confident smile I hadn't worn in years. "I'm Thomas," he said. "I'm the priest you could have been if you hadn't questioned, if you'd kept your faith." Thomas began to speak about God's mysterious ways, about how suffering builds character, about how we can't understand the divine plan. With each word, he seemed to fade a little, becoming transparent. "Stop," I said. "Those are empty words. They justify atrocities." Thomas nodded sadly and faded completely away. In that moment, I understood something terrible. Blind faith enables horror. It gives divine permission to human cruelty. The Mothman's wings expanded until they filled the bunker, showing me thousands of readers, viewers, listeners, people encountering this story across time and space. Every person who questioned why God allows suffering was becoming part of the jury. You could take his place, the Mothman offered. You could become the new deity, design a universe without suffering. "I'm not qualified," I said. "No one is." "Then what's your verdict?" Around me, the bunker walls became covered with religious symbols from every faith, crosses, stars, crescents, wheels, eyes, all watching, all waiting for an answer. And then I knew the most terrible truth of all. I'd been dead since my first crisis of faith. My entire spiritual journey, my doubts, my questions, my pain, had all been my service as a witness in God's trial. I wasn't hiding in a bunker in West Virginia. I was standing in the cosmic courtroom, preparing to render judgment on divine justice itself. Heavy footsteps echoed outside the bunker. A search party had come, led by Bishop Hernandez, my former superior, the man who had first noticed my crisis of faith. "Gabriel," he said when he saw me. His face was older than I remembered, lined with the weight of his own witnessed sorrows. "We've been looking for you for days." "How did you find me?" I asked. "I knew you'd come here. You always said these bunkers felt like churches built to protect people from destruction." The bishop had seen the same atrocities I had. We'd served together in war zones, in disaster areas, but where my faith had broken, his had somehow held. "You still believe?" I said. It wasn't a question. "I do," he answered. Despite everything, I could feel the choice before me. I could restore my faith by accepting the bishop's view that suffering somehow served a purpose in God's plan. But doing that would mean betraying every victim whose pain had opened my eyes. It would mean telling them their suffering was necessary. "I can't go back with you," I said. "I can't pretend anymore." The bishop's face changed. Pain spread across it. He clutched his chest, just as Mark had done. "The weight," he gasped. "How do you bear the weight of knowing?" He collapsed to the bunker floor. His faith had protected him from the full knowledge of divine absence. When that protection fell away, the cognitive dissonance was too much for his heart to bear. I knelt beside him, but I knew he was already gone. The walls of the bunker became transparent again. This time I saw a vast courtroom. Seated around it were the other protagonists I had felt inside me: Ted, Vinny, Zeke, Bo. All of them were serving as character witnesses in God's trial. "Your crisis of faith wasn't a punishment," a voice said. I turned to see Christ standing there again. It was a gift. The ability to see injustice is the foundation of compassion. Another knock at the door. This time it was Maria, my sister, who had become a nun because of my early devotion. She had followed my path into religious life, inspired by my certainty. "Your doubt created mine," she said simply. I understood the test immediately. If I accepted her continued faith, I would invalidate my own journey. If I tried to convince her of divine absence, I would take away her comfort. "Both our paths can be true," I finally said. "Your faith and my doubt can exist together." She smiled, but like the others, she began to fade. Her passing was gentler, teaching me that multiple relationships with the divine could coexist. Something strange was happening to me. I could feel faith and doubt existing simultaneously in my mind, not fighting each other, but creating something new, a relationship with the divine based on questioning rather than certainty. "This is your role now," the Mothman said. its voice gentler than before, to be the eternal advocate for divine victims, to ensure every unanswered prayer receives cosmic consideration. The legal language and religious texts around me began to merge into something new, sacred words that acknowledged both divine love and divine failure, that held both possibility and limitation. I found myself writing a prayer, not to God, but to someone named David Kellerman. As I wrote, I realized that writing these stories was itself a form of prayer, a way of wrestling with the divine through human creativity. Understanding washed over me like a wave. Doubt wasn't the opposite of faith. It was faith's purest form, the courage to question, to demand better, to hold the divine to account. The 5 locations I had seen through the bunker walls merged into a vast cathedral, not a place of blind worship, but a forum where divine justice was continuously debated and refined. I noticed something appearing beside each person who encountered this story, a small communion wafer. As they touched it, it dissolved to reveal their own spiritual doubts written in edible ink, their questions becoming part of the cosmic conversation. You can go back, Christ offered, return to life, restore global faith, but it would eliminate humanity's capacity for moral growth through questioning. I'll stay here, I decided, in between where I can speak for both sides. Around me, a confession booth appeared, not just for me, but extending outward to anyone reading or hearing this story. A place where they could write their own spiritual doubts and have them mysteriously answered. I felt my consciousness expanding, becoming embedded in every prayer ever spoken, not to answer them all, that was beyond even divine power, but to ensure that future spiritual seekers would find strength in questioning rather than blind acceptance. In the world of the living, religious leaders began experiencing my crisis of faith. Priests, pastors, imams, rabbis, all suddenly confronted with difficult theological questions they had avoided for years. And then I understood my true purpose, not to condemn or defend the divine, but to ensure that every person's spiritual journey included both faith and doubt, both certainty and questioning. I turned to you, yes, you, and asked the only question that matters. Your spiritual audit has begun. What do you truly believe? The pages before you begin to shift, revealing your deepest theological doubts written in one column, your most profound hopes in another. The trial continues. It has always continued, and you are now part of the jury. My name is Beauregard Thibodeau, but folks just call me Beau. I'm 49 years old, born and raised in the bayous of Louisiana before Uncle Sam dragged me off to Vietnam. These days, I keep to myself in the swamps of Boggy Creek, Arkansas. It's quiet here, or at least it was supposed to be. I came to these woods to disappear. The army's still looking for me, at least that's what I thought. Court-martialed for things I did in the war, things I don't like remembering. So I set up my little cabin deep in the swamp where nobody asks questions, and I make my living taking what the land gives. Some might call it poaching, but I call it surviving. My setup is simple, but it works. Traps for small game, fishing lines in the creek, and my old rifle for the occasional deer or wild boar. I sell what I don't eat to a few locals who don't mind where their meat comes from. It ain't much, but it's a life. It's freedom. But something ain't right here in Boggy Creek. Started noticing it about a week ago. I was going through some of my old military papers, keeping them dry as a constant battle in this damp wind. I spotted something strange. My deployment records, they listed places I'd never been to. Arctic Research Station 1962, I was only 13 then. Police Action Seattle 1974, that's in the future, for crying out loud. Mining Operation Kentucky 1968, I was in Vietnam then. And Chaplain Service West Virginia 1966, I had never been no chaplain. I figured it was just some clerical error. Papers got mixed up. The army's good at that, mixing things up. But then the radio started acting funny. I keep an old military radio, mostly to track weather and pick up any news about game wardens patrolling the area. Last night, I was tuning it when I heard the strangest things. Whaling ship coordinates from what sounded like the 1800s, police calls from some big city riot, mining reports about cave-ins, church sermons about the end times, all coming through at once, like the radio was picking up signals from different times. I slapped it a few times, but it kept going. Voices talking over each other, some sounding old-timey, others modern. I turned it off and tried to sleep. Couldn't shake the feeling something was watching me from the dark corners of my cabin. This morning, I found my old journals. Been keeping field notes since I got here, habit from the service. But the pages were filled with things I don't remember writing. Details about animals dying off. Notes about extinctions happening right now, connected to my hunting. One page said I'd killed the last male of some frog species I'd never heard of. Another page had tally marks of bird populations dropping by the day. The writing was mine, no doubt about it, but I don't remember putting those words on paper. Then I found a folder I'd never seen before. Inside were military reports, my military reports, but they weren't about Vietnam. They were about operations against native tribes, people protecting sacred lands, and I was the one giving orders to clear them out, for mining companies, for dams, for roads cutting through ancient forests. My hands shook as I read the reports. This wasn't me. I never did these things. I was just a grunt in Vietnam, wasn't I? The memory came back like a punch to the gut. A village, not in Vietnam, but somewhere else. People standing in front of bulldozers. Me, ordering my men to move. Them, by any means necessary. The screams, the blood. All to get at whatever was in that ground. Whatever those people were protecting. And now, I'm here, in Boggy Creek, doing the same damn thing. Taking what isn't mine. Killing what should be left. Alone, I tried to leave this morning. Packed my gear, and headed south, toward Louisiana. 3 miles in, the trail looped back to my cabin. Tried east, toward the highway. Found myself walking through snow in Arkansas, in summer before, circling back to my cabin again. North and west were the same. Every path led me right back where I started. The weather's been changing to this morning. It was hot and muggy, like normal. By noon, it was dry as a bone. Dust blowing everywhere like stories my grandpa told about the Dust Bowl. An hour later, the air felt thick with something that burned my lungs like the chemical smells from the factories back home. Now it's cold. Ice Age cold, with frost forming on my windows. Then I saw it for the first time. I was checking my traps by the creek when I noticed something moving through the trees, bigger than a bear, walking on 2 legs. I raised my rifle, then froze when it stepped into the clearing. It wasn't one animal. It was ... everything. Parts of deer and rabbit and gator and bird and fish, all mashed together but somehow alive. And I recognized every piece. They were from animals I'd killed since coming here. It had the antlers from the 10-point buck I shot last fall, the spotted fur of the bobcat I trapped in winter, the scales from the big gator I took in spring. But worst of all were the eyes. Human eyes, dozens of them, staring from all over its body. And when it opened what I guess was its mouth, it spoke with voices I knew. Vietnamese voices, voices of people I'd killed in the war. Or maybe people I'd killed in those other places, those places I wasn't supposed to have been. Beauregard, it said in 100 voices at once. The earth remembers. I ran back to my cabin and barred the door. That's where I am now, writing this down. Outside, the sky is cycling through impossible colors. My radio's going crazy with voices from all times, and my field journal keeps filling up with new extinction species, dying with every breath I take. The page in front of me just changed. It's not my journal anymore. It's some kind of report, an environmental impact statement. But it's not about me or Boggy Creek. It's about someone else. Someone reading these words right now. It lists everything they've done today. Every bit of energy they've used. Every piece of plastic. Every animal that died to feed them. Every tree cut down to make their furniture. The earth is watching all of us. And I don't think it's going to forgive much longer. Something's scratching at my door. I think it's time to face what I've done. I didn't sleep last night. How could I? That thing is still out there. I can feel it watching the cabin, waiting. This morning, I heard a voice calling from outside. A voice I never thought I'd hear again. Daddy, Daddy, are you in there? My heart stopped. That was Celeste's voice. My little girl. My baby. I rushed to the window and saw her standing at the edge of the clearing. Celeste, just as beautiful as the day I last saw her. But that's not possible. Celeste died when she was just 7 years old. Cancer, the doctor said. Rare for a child so young. You're not real, I whispered, but I couldn't look away. She smiled that gap-toothed smile I remembered so well. I'm as real as you are, Daddy. Won't you come out and see me? I knew it was a trick. Had to be. But my hands were already unbarring the door. I stepped onto the porch, rifle ready just in case. Celeste stood there in her favorite yellow dress. The one we buried her in. How are you here? I asked, my voice shaking. I never left, Daddy. I've been waiting for you to understand. Understand? What? Her face changed then, not into the monster I'd seen before, but something worse. Her skin became pale, her hair fell out in clumps, and dark circles formed around her eyes. She looked sick, dying, just like she did in the hospital. It wasn't just cancer, Daddy, she said. It was what you brought home from the war, on your clothes, in your blood, the chemicals they sprayed on the forests, Agent Orange. You carried it back to me. I felt my knees give out. I'd always suspected, but hearing it from her. But that's not all, she continued, and her voice changed. It wasn't just Celeste anymore, it was other voices too. Men's voices, women's voices. It wasn't just Vietnam, it was everywhere you went, everything you did. Suddenly, I wasn't just me anymore. I was seeing through other eyes, feeling other lives. I was Ted, cutting down ancient trees for lumber, watching forests disappear. I was Vinny, a police officer using too much force against people trying to protect their land. I was Zeke, dumping factory waste into clear rivers, watching the fish die. I was Gabriel, believing humans had the right to take whatever we wanted from the earth. And all of them were me. Different names, different times, but the same soul making the same mistakes over and over. Do you see now, Daddy? Celeste asked, her voice breaking through the flood of memories. Do you understand what you are? The thing that looked like. My daughter stepped closer. I can make you strong, Daddy. I can make you the perfect hunter, the perfect survivor. You'll never feel guilty again. You'll never feel anything for what you kill. She held out her small hand. Just let go of your heart. Stop caring about anything but yourself. It's easier that way. I almost took her hand. Almost. What really happened to you, Celeste? I asked, pulling back. Tell me the truth. Her face, twisted in pain. It wasn't just the Agent Orange, Daddy. It was everything. The toxins you released when you blew up that storage facility near the village. The chemicals you helped test on that reservation. The radiation you were exposed to during that special operation they never named. You brought it all home in your body. Your damaged genes became my damaged genes. The swamp around us began to change. The water in the creek started flowing, in strange patterns, like blood pulsing through veins. The trees seemed to bend toward each other, connecting like nerves in a giant brain. The ground beneath my feet felt like it was breathing. What is this place? I whispered. What's happening? The swamp isn't just a swamp, Celeste said. But it wasn't just her voice anymore. It was the voice of the monster too. It's alive. The whole planet is alive. And you humans are making it sick. The thing wearing my daughter's face grew taller, its skin changing, taking on textures of bark and fur and scale. I'm not evil, Beauregard Thibodeau. I'm just trying to keep the balance. I'm the fever that fights the infection. I'm the antibody that targets the disease. And right now, the disease is humanity. And me? I asked, already knowing the answer. You're special, it said. You could be part of the cure. You could help me restore the balance. I looked down and saw my field journal had appeared in my hands. But now, instead of tracking the animals I'd killed, it was tracking something else. Every page showed the impact of choices. Not just my choices, but the choices of whoever would read these words someday. How many miles they drove today. How much plastic they threw away. How many animals died to make their meals. How much water they wasted. How much air they polluted. The writing on the pages started to change. Military terms I'd used all my life were being replaced by biological ones. Target acquired became species identified. Collateral damage became ecosystem disruption. Strategic advantage became sustainable balance. I was changing to. I could feel the swamp becoming part of me, or maybe I was becoming part of it. My skin felt like bark. My blood flowed with the creek. My breath matched the wind through the trees. And suddenly, I wasn't just in the present anymore. I was experiencing the swamp as it had been 1,000,000 years ago, when dinosaurs drank from these waters. I was there when the first humans arrived, living in harmony with the land. I saw the arrival of European settlers, the changes they brought. I witnessed every animal and plant that had ever lived and died here. And through it all, I felt the watchful presence of something ancient, something that had been judging us all along. What do you want from me? I asked the thing that was, no longer pretending to be Celeste. Understanding, it said. And then, action. The sky darkened overhead as clouds gathered from nowhere. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and something else. something old and powerful. A storm is coming. Beauregard, the entity, said, not just here, everywhere. The earth has been patient. It has given warning after warning, but time is running out. Lightning flashed, and in that instant, I saw the truth. I wasn't hiding from a court-martial. I wasn't a fugitive from human justice. I was running from something much bigger, something that had been watching all ever since. The first human picked up a stone and decided to take more than they needed, and it was done waiting. The rain started to fall, heavy drops that steamed when they hit the ground. I stood there, feeling each drop soak through my clothes, not sure if I should run or stay. The entity, I couldn't think of it as the Falk monster anymore, and definitely not as Celeste waited silently. Then I heard the sound of an engine. Headlights cut through the trees as a truck pulled up to my cabin. The door opened, and a tall figure stepped out. Mr. Thibodeau called a woman's voice. Beauregard, Thibodeau. She walked into the clearing, wearing what looked like a game warden uniform. But when she got closer, I felt my heart stop for the second time that day. It was Celeste again, but not my little girl. This was Celeste as a grown woman, maybe 30 years old, strong, healthy, alive. Dad, she said, her voice breaking. Is that really you? You're not real, I said, backing away. None of this is real. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a photo. It showed her as a child with me and her mother. I've been looking for you for years. After Mom died, I found your old military records. I've been tracking you down. My Celeste died, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Cancer, when she was 7. The woman shook her head. In this timeline, I lived. Dad, I survived. The doctors found it early enough in this version of events. Don't you remember? And strangely, I did remember. 2 sets of memories in my head. In one, I held my daughter's hand as she slipped away in a hospital bed. In the other, I celebrated her 8th birthday, her high school graduation, her college acceptance. How? I asked. Time isn't as straight as we think, she said, stepping closer. In one timeline, you brought home enough toxins to kill me. In this one, you were more careful. You made different choices. She held out her hand. I forgive you, Dad, for everything. Come home with me. I wanted to take her hand, more than anything. But then I saw the entity standing behind her, watching, waiting. If I accept your forgiveness, I said slowly, what happens? You get to be my dad again, she said, smiling through tears. You get to leave all this behind. I understood then. This was a choice. Accept forgiveness and abandon everything I'd learned about the planet, the entity, my responsibility, or reject my own daughter to protect what was left of the natural world. I can't, I said, the words like acid in my mouth. I'm sorry, Celeste. I can't go with you. Her smile faded. Why not, Dad? Because it would be selfish. Because some things are more important than what I want. As I said the words, adult Celeste began to change. Not into the monster, but into something worse. Her skin paled. Dark circles formed under her eyes. She started coughing, a wet, horrible sound. Dad, she said, reaching for me as she collapsed. What's happening to me? I rushed to catch her, but she was already fading. The genetic damage, the same damage that killed her in my original timeline, was happening right before my eyes. I'm sorry, I whispered as she died in my arms for the second time in my life. I'm so sorry. The entity stepped forward. Now you understand the cost. Every choice has consequences. Every action ripples through time. I laid Celeste's body gently on the ground, but when I looked again, it was gone, like it had never been there at all. What are you? I demanded, anger finally breaking through my grief. You're not the Falk monster. You're not just some creature in the woods. No, it agreed, its form shifting again. I am the combined consciousness of every species humanity has pushed to extinction. Every animal and plant that will never exist again because of human greed. And we are tired of forgiving. The entity grew larger, towering over me. It wasn't just made of animals I'd killed anymore. It was made of thousands of creatures, some I recognized, others I'd never seen before. Extinct species, endangered species, beings that existed only in memory now. You've been manipulating me, I said, playing with my mind. No more than you've been manipulating the world around you, it replied, taking what isn't yours, killing what should live. Humans call it progress, we call it extinction. The rain fell harder. Lightning split the sky. In each flash, I saw the entity differently, sometimes as animals, sometimes as forests, sometimes as oceans. What do you want from me? I asked again. A choice, it said. Humanity has reached a crossroads. You can continue as you are, consuming and destroying until there's nothing left, or you can change, become something new, something that works with the planet instead of against it. And how do I make that choice for all humanity? You don't, it said. You make it for yourself. But every individual choice creates ripples. Enough ripples become a wave. Enough waves become a tide. Before I could respond, another vehicle approached. This one was military, a jeep with faded army markings. 3 men got out, dressed in combat gear. Thibodeau called, a familiar voice that made my blood run cold. Front and center, soldier. It was Gator, my old sergeant from Vietnam. The man who'd ordered us to clear that village. The man who'd handed me the flamethrower and told me to make sure nothing was left standing. But as he got closer, his face changed. It wasn't just Gator anymore. It was the face of every Vietnamese civilian I'd killed. Men, women, children, all looking at me through Gator's eyes. You've been hiding long enough, Gator said, but his voice was accented now, a blend of Vietnamese and English. Time to answer for what you did to our home. I was following orders, I said automatically, the excuse I'd told myself for years. Our home, the Gator thing repeated, our sacred lands, our ancient forests, the places we protected for generations, until you came with your machines and your chemicals. I realized then that they weren't talking about Vietnam. They were talking about everywhere. Every piece of land humans had taken. Every ecosystem we'd destroyed. The planet is trying to defend itself, the entity said from behind me, just as any living thing would. It's developing antibodies, defenses, a planetary immune system. And what am I in this system? I asked, already guessing the answer. You could be a commander, it said. You have military training, strategic thinking. You understand how to defend territory. You could lead Earth's defense forces against the worst offenders, the corporations cutting down rainforests, the industries poisoning oceans, the governments ignoring the crisis. As wasn't just her voice anymore. It was the voice of the monster too. It's alive. The whole planet is alive. And you humans are making it sick. The thing wearing my daughter's face grew taller, its skin changing, taking on textures of bark and fur and scale. I'm not evil, Beauregard Thibodeau. I'm just trying to keep the balance. I'm the fever that fights the infection. I'm the antibody that targets the disease. And right now, the disease is humanity. And me, I asked, already knowing the answer. You're special, it said. You could be part of the cure. You could help me restore the balance. I looked down and saw my field journal had appeared in my hands. But now, instead of tracking the animals I'd killed, it was tracking something else. Every page showed the impact of choices. Not just my choices, but the choices of whoever would read these words someday. How many miles they drove today. How much plastic they threw away. How many animals died to make their meals. How much water they wasted. How much air they polluted. The writing on the pages started to change. Military terms I'd used all my life were being replaced by biological ones. Target acquired became species identified. Collateral damage became ecosystem disruption. Strategic advantage became sustainable balance. I was changing to... I could feel the swamp becoming part of me. Or maybe I was becoming part of it. My skin felt like bark. My blood flowed with the creek. My breath matched the wind through the trees. And suddenly, I wasn't just in the present anymore. I was experiencing the swamp as it had been 1,000,000 years ago, when dinosaurs drank from these waters. I was there when the first humans arrived, living in harmony with the land. I saw the arrival of European settlers, the changes they brought. I witnessed every animal and plant that had ever lived and died here. And through it all, I felt the watchful presence of something ancient, something that had been judging us all along. What do you want from me? I asked the thing that was, no longer pretending to be Celeste. Understanding, it said, and then, action. The sky darkened overhead as clouds gathered from nowhere. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and something else, something old and powerful. A storm is coming. Beauregard, the entity, said, not just here, everywhere. The earth has been patient. It has given warning after warning, but time is running out. Lightning flashed, and in that instant, I saw the truth. I wasn't hiding from a court-martial. I wasn't a fugitive from human justice. I was running from something much bigger. something that had been watching me all ever since. The first human picked up a stone and decided to take more than they needed, and it was done waiting. The rain started to fall, heavy drops that steamed when they hit the ground. I stood there, feeling each drop soak through my clothes, not sure if I should run or stay. The entity, I couldn't think of it as the Falk monster anymore, and definitely not as Celeste waited silently. Then I heard the sound of an engine. Headlights cut through the trees as a truck pulled up to my cabin. The door opened, and a tall figure stepped out. Mr. Thibodeau, called a woman's voice. Beauregard Thibodeau. She walked into the clearing, wearing what looked like a game warden uniform. But when she got closer, I felt my heart stop for the second time that day. It was Celeste again, but not my little girl. This was Celeste as a grown woman, maybe 30 years old, strong, healthy, alive. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "Is that really you?" "You're not real," I said, backing away. "None of this is real." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a photo. It showed her as a child with me and her mother. "I've been looking for you for years. After Mom died, I found your old military records. I've been tracking you down." "My Celeste died," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Cancer, when she was 7. The woman shook her head. "In this timeline, I lived, Dad. I survived. The doctors found it early enough in this version of events. Don't you remember?" And strangely, I did remember. 2 sets of memories in my head. In one, I held my daughter's hand as she slipped away in a hospital bed. In the other, I celebrated her 8th birthday, her high school graduation, her college acceptance. "How?" I asked. "Time isn't as straight as we think," she said, stepping closer. "In one timeline, you brought home enough toxins to kill me. In this one, you were more careful. You made different choices." She held out her hand. "I forgive you, Dad, for everything. Come home with me." I wanted to take her hand, more than anything, but then I saw the entity standing behind her, watching, waiting. "If I accept your forgiveness," I said slowly, "what happens?" "You get to be my dad again," she said, smiling through tears. "You get to leave all this behind." I understood then. This was a choice. Accept forgiveness and abandon everything I'd learned about the planet, the entity, my responsibility, or reject my own daughter to protect what was left of the natural world. "I can't," I said, the words like acid in my mouth. "I'm sorry, Celeste. I can't go with you." Her smile faded. "Why not, Dad?" "Because it would be selfish. Because some things are more important than what I want." As I said the words, adult Celeste began to change. Not into the monster, but into something worse. Her skin paled. Dark circles formed under her eyes. She started coughing, a wet, horrible sound. "Dad," she said, reaching for me as she collapsed. "What's happening to me?" I rushed to catch her, but she was already fading. The genetic damage, the same damage that killed her in my original timeline, was happening right before my eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered as she died in my arms for the second time in my life. "I'm so sorry." The entity stepped forward. "Now you understand the cost. Every choice has consequences. Every action ripples through time." I laid Celeste's body gently on the ground, but when I looked again, it was gone, like it had never been there at all. "What are you?" I demanded, anger finally breaking through my grief. "You're not the Falk monster. You're not just some creature in the woods." "No," it agreed, its form shifting again. "I am the combined consciousness of every species humanity has pushed to extinction. Every animal and plant that will never exist again because of human greed, and we are tired of forgiving." The entity grew larger, towering over me. It wasn't just made of animals I'd killed anymore. It was made of thousands of creatures, some I recognized, others I'd never seen before. Extinct species, endangered species, beings that existed only in memory now. "You've been manipulating me," I said, playing with my mind. "No more than you've been manipulating the world around you," it replied, "taking what isn't yours, killing what should live. Humans call it progress, we call it extinction." The rain fell harder. Lightning split the sky. In each flash, I saw the entity differently, sometimes as animals, sometimes as forests, sometimes as oceans. "What do you want from me?" I asked again. "A choice," it said. "Humanity has reached a crossroads. You can continue as you are, consuming and destroying until there's nothing left, or you can change, become something new, something that works with the planet instead of against it. And how do I make that choice for all humanity?" "You don't," it said. You make it for yourself. But every individual choice creates ripples. Enough ripples become a wave. Enough waves become a tide. Before I could respond, another vehicle approached. This one was military, a jeep with faded army markings. 3 men got out, dressed in combat gear. Thibodeau called, a familiar voice that made my blood run cold. Front and center, soldier. It was Gator, my old sergeant from Vietnam. The man who'd ordered us to clear that village. The man who'd handed me the flamethrower and told me to make sure nothing was left standing. But as he got closer, his face changed. It wasn't just Gator anymore. It was the face of every Vietnamese civilian I'd killed. Men, women, children, all looking at me through Gator's eyes. You've been hiding long enough, Gator said. But his voice was accented now. A blend of Vietnamese and English. Time to answer for what you did to our home. I was following orders, I said automatically. The excuse I'd told myself for years. Our home. The Gator thing repeated. Our sacred lands. Our ancient forests, the places we protected for generations, until you came with your machines and your chemicals. I realized then that they weren't talking about Vietnam. They were talking about everywhere. Every piece of land humans had taken. Every ecosystem we'd destroyed. The planet is trying to defend itself, the entity said from behind me, just as any living thing would. It's developing antibodies, defenses, a planetary immune system. And what am I in this system? I asked, already guessing the answer. You could be a commander, it said. You have military training, strategic thinking. You understand how to defend territory. You could lead Earth's defense forces against the worst offenders, the corporations cutting down rainforests, the industries poisoning oceans, the governments ignoring the crisis. My name is Vincent Gallagher, but everyone just calls me Vince. I came to this old logging camp in the Adirondack Mountains to get away from everything. After what I saw in Vietnam, and losing my job at the auto plant in Detroit, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere I could be alone with my thoughts. October 1974 wasn't supposed to be so warm. The drive up here was beautiful. All those red and orange leaves against a perfect blue sky. The logging roads were rough though, full of potholes and fallen branches. My old truck barely made it the last 10 miles. The camp looked abandoned at first glance. A cluster of wooden buildings slowly being reclaimed by the forest. The main lodge, some smaller cabins, and what looked like an old supply shed. The whole place had this heavy feeling, like the air itself was tired. I parked near the main building and grabbed my duffel bag. Inside I found dust and cobwebs, but also something strange. A coffee mug on the table, still half full but ice cold. Someone had been here recently. That night, I set up in one of the smaller cabins, the one with the least broken windows. I built a fire in the wood stove and took out my carving tools. Whittling helps calm my nerves. Always has, ever since I was a kid. That night I carved a little bird, but somehow it came out all wrong. Its wings looked twisted, unnatural. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone out here. 47 miles from the nearest town, and still I felt watched. The woods were too quiet. No owls, no crickets, nothing. As I was falling asleep, I heard scratching under the floorboards. Probably just a raccoon, I told myself. But deep down, I knew better. This place had secrets, and I was about to learn them all, whether I wanted to or not. I woke up to knocking at my cabin door. I wasn't expecting anyone who would even know I was here. The woman outside introduced herself as Rebecca Torres. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and carried a worn leather backpack full of notebooks. I'm studying local stories and legends, she explained as I made us coffee on the wood stove. This area has some fascinating history. Rebecca showed me her research notes about something called the Thornwick Shadow Walker. According to her, the locals avoided this area. They said something lived in the old mine near the camp. In 1923, they found 23 loggers dead here, she said quietly, all cut up in strange ways. Officials blamed it on a fight that got out of hand, but the cuts weren't made by any normal knife or axe. I felt cold despite the warm coffee in my hands. The next day, I explored more of the camp and found a small building at the edge of the clearing. Inside was a makeshift chapel with candles and a simple wooden cross. That's where I met Father O'Brien, a thin man with grey hair and tired eyes. "This place needs blessing," he said instead of hello. He was mumbling prayers in a language I didn't recognize. I asked why he was here, all alone in the woods. to make amends, was all he said. 2 days later, a young kid showed up. Jake Morrison, just 19, with a backpack and a scared look in his eyes, said he was running away from home and needed a place to stay. Something followed me here, he whispered that night as we sat around the fire. For days now, I hear it at night, scratching. I wanted to tell him it was just his imagination, but I'd heard those same scratches. The last to arrive was Elena Vasquez, a park ranger. She had a gun on her hip and a serious face. There are 5 hikers missing in this area, she told us, and this camp is under quarantine. Nobody's supposed to be here. That's when I noticed the food in my cabin had spoiled overnight. The metal tools were covered in rust that wasn't there before, and those scratching sounds were getting louder every night. We were 5 strangers in an abandoned camp, and something was very wrong with Thornwick Ridge. Things got stranger every day. Food would go bad within hours, even canned stuff. My hunting knife, which I'd kept clean and sharp for years, was covered in rust one morning. The scratching under the floors got louder at night. We all heard it. It would start in one cabin and then move to another, like something was traveling underneath us. It's just animals, Elena said, but she didn't sound like she believed it. One evening, I was washing my face in a bucket of water when I saw something that made my blood run cold. A shadow on the wall moved, but not because anything in the room had moved. It slid across the wall all by itself, like it was alive. Father O'Brien spent most of his time in his little chapel, praying louder each day. Sometimes I'd walk by and hear him talking to someone, but when I looked inside, he was alone. Rebecca kept taking notes about everything. She seemed more excited than scared, which worried me. These are classic signs, she told me. Just like the stories from 1923, Jake was the worst off. The kid barely slept. His eyes had dark circles under them, and he jumped at every sound. I see things at night, he whispered to me, standing in the corner of my room, watching me. We all started having the same nightmare, being buried alive, dirt filling our mouths as we tried to scream. I'd wake up gasping for air, my sheets soaked with sweat. One morning I found handprints on the inside of my window, small handprints, like a child's, pressed against the glass, but they were facing inward, as if someone had been trying to get out. Elena suggested we leave, but a huge storm had moved in overnight. The temperature dropped from warm to freezing in just hours. The road I'd driven in on was now blocked by fallen trees. We should check the old ranger station, Elena said. There's a radio there. We can call for help. That night, Rebecca announced she was going to explore the old mine shaft the next morning. All the answers are down there, she said. I can feel it. I begged her not to go, but she just smiled and said, "This is what I came here for." None of us knew she'd be the first to die. Rebecca left for the mine early in the morning. She took a flashlight, her notebook, and a small camera. "I'll be back by lunch," she promised. Noon came and went. No Rebecca. By 2 o'clock, I was worried sick. "We need to look for her," I told the others. Father O'Brien shook his head. "That place is evil," he said. "We shouldn't go there." But I couldn't just sit around. Elena agreed to come with me while Jake and Father O'Brien stayed at the camp. The mine entrance was about a mile from camp, a dark hole in the side of the ridge. The wooden support beams were rotting, and a sign warned danger, do not enter. In faded letters, "Rebecca," I called into the darkness. No answer. We followed the tunnel, our flashlights making long shadows on the walls. The air got colder the deeper we went. Then we heard it, a weak voice calling for help. We ran forward and found Rebecca on the ground. I'll never forget what I saw. Her body was covered in long, thin cuts, dozens of them, like someone had been slicing her with razor blades. The cuts made strange patterns, almost like writing. But there was no blood. The wounds were dry, as if they were days old. But Rebecca was still alive. It played with me, she whispered when I knelt beside her. For hours, I could feel it watching me in the dark. Then it started cutting. "What did this?" Elena asked, her hand on her gun. "A person, an animal." Rebecca's eyes were wide with fear. "Neither. It's the Shadow Walker. It's real." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "It's not done with us yet." We tried to carry her out, but she died before we reached the entrance. Her body suddenly felt ice cold, and her skin turned grey, like all the life had been drained out of her. Back at camp, we told Jake and Father O'Brien what happened. "God have mercy on us all," the priest said, crossing himself. That night, as we sat in shocked silence, the scratching under the floors stopped. Instead, we heard a new sound, something dragging itself across the roof of the main lodge. When I went outside to look, I saw nothing, but in the dirt I found long, deep claw marks, like railroad spikes, had been dragged across the ground. Whatever made them was big, too big to be any animal I knew. And the worst part, the tracks led right to the door of Father O'Brien's chapel. The next few days were a nightmare. We buried Rebecca near the camp, and Father O'Brien said prayers over her grave. His voice shook the whole time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those strange cuts on Rebecca's body. They weren't random. They looked like some kind of pattern or symbol. Around midnight, I heard Father O'Brien in his chapel. He was praying louder than usual, his voice rising and falling. Curious, I walked over and peeked through the window. The priest was on his knees, but something was wrong. His body was twitching and jerking like he was having a fit, and he wasn't speaking English anymore, or any language I'd ever heard. The words sounded wrong somehow, like they hurt his mouth to say them. As I watched, the shadows around him seemed to move and gather. They pooled around him like black water, then started climbing up his body. I must have made a noise, because he suddenly turned and looked right at me. His eyes were completely black. I ran back to my cabin and locked the door. The next morning, Father O'Brien was acting strange. His movements were stiff, like he wasn't used to his own body. When he talked, there was a delay, like he had to think about each word before saying it. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked him. "Many voices," he replied, smiling oddly. "Many souls within. The vessel holds us all now." Jake saw it too. He came to my cabin, pale and shaking. "Something's inside him," the kid whispered. "I watched it happen last night. These shadow things went into his mouth, his eyes, his ears. He didn't even fight it. Elena suggested we tie him up until we could get help, but I wasn't sure. He hadn't hurt anyone yet. That changed at dinner. We were all eating canned beans when Father O'Brien suddenly grabbed Jake's arm and bit it hard. It took both me and Elena to pull him off. We locked him in the supply shed. All night, we could hear him talking to himself in different voices, sometimes deep and growling, sometimes high and childlike. By morning, the shed was quiet. When we opened the door, what we found didn't make sense. Father O'Brien was sitting there, smiling, but his skin looked loose, like a suit that was too big, and there were movements under it, like something was crawling around inside him. "The others are coming now," he said in a voice that wasn't his. "They're so hungry." Jake couldn't look away. The poor kid was frozen with fear. Then Father O'Brien's skin split open down the middle, but there was no blood, no organs inside, just darkness and moving shadows. The thing that had been Father O'Brien kept talking and moving for hours after that, his empty skin puppet-like, and all the while, the shadows inside him seemed to be getting bigger, stronger. That night, Jake didn't say a word. He just stared at the wall, jumping at every sound. And I started to notice he had shadows under his skin too, just small ones. For now, strange things started happening that I couldn't explain. My watch ran backward for 3 hours. A room I walked out of was suddenly half its size when I went back in. I forgot my own middle name for an entire day. Alina and I decided to search the camp for clues. In the main lodge, we found an old storage room with newspapers and records. "Look at this," Alina said, showing me a yellowed newspaper from 1923. The headline read, "23 loggers found dead at Thornwick Camp. Authorities suspect murder suit." The article talked about how the men were found severely mutilated and how 3 others were missing, presumed to have fled after committing the crime. But a handwritten note in the margin caught my eye. It wasn't men who did this. It was the thing from the cave. It wakes every 50 years to feed. We found more notes, journals, and even old photographs. They all told the same story. Something ancient lived in the mine. The Lagers called it the Reich because of its long, claw-like fingers. "This doesn't make sense," Alina whispered. "These kinds of things don't exist." But we'd both seen what happened to Rebecca and Father O'Brien. In another journal, we found something even more disturbing. "The camp is a trap," it said. "It makes you think you can leave, but all paths lead back here. It wants us to feel hopeless. That's how it likes to feed." Just then, Jake walked in. He looked terrible, pale and twitchy, with dark circles under his eyes. "I've been having weird dreams," he said, "about the thing in the mine. It told me things." "What things?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know. "It's been here for thousands of years. It sleeps for decades. then wakes up hungry. Jake's voice sounded flat, emotionless. It doesn't just eat people. It eats their fear and despair first. It makes them lose hope before it takes their lives. How do you know all this? Elena asked, her hand moving toward her gun. Jake smiled strangely. It showed me. And now it's showing me other things too, like how to help it. That's when I noticed the shadows moving under Jake's skin, just like Father O'Brien, but Jake was fighting it. I could tell. His hands shook as he tried to control himself. It's in me, he whispered, tears in his eyes. I can feel it taking over. You need to tie me up before I hurt someone. We used rope from the supply shed to tie Jake to a chair in the main lodge. All the while, he kept telling us what he knew. The camp, the roads, the mine, they're not what they seem, he said. They changed to keep people trapped. We were never going to escape. It brought us all here on purpose. That night, as the wind howled outside, I realized with horror that the 1923 massacre happened exactly 51 years ago. The creature had awakened for another feeding cycle, and we were the main course. The next morning, Jake seemed better. He was calmer and said the voice in his head was quieter. I think I'm fighting it off, he told us, looking hopeful. If we stick together, maybe we can beat this thing. Elena was skeptical but agreed to untie him. We needed all the help we could get. I'm going to the ranger station to try the radio again, Elena announced. It's our best chance. I didn't like the idea of splitting up, but she insisted. The station was only a mile away, and she knew the way. I'll be back before dark, she promised. After she left, Jake helped me board up the windows of the main lodge. We worked quietly, the only sound, the pounding of our hammers. Vince, Jake said suddenly, his voice strange. Do you ever wonder what it feels like to die? I turned to look at him. His eyes weren't right. They were darker somehow. I think it's fighting its way back in, I said, reaching for the rope. Let me tie you up again, just to be safe. No, Jake shouted, backing away. I'm fine, really, just had a weird thought. I didn't believe him, but I also didn't want to force him. That was my mistake. As the day went on, Jake got quieter. He would stare at nothing for minutes at a time, then snap back to normal like nothing happened. By evening, Elena hadn't returned. I was getting worried. We should go look for her, I said. Jake nodded too quickly. Yes, let's check the mine first. The mine? Why would she be there? She went to the ranger station. Jake's face twitched. Right, I meant the ranger station. Let's go there. As we walked through the darkening forest, I stayed a few steps behind Jake. Something was very wrong with him. We reached a fork in the path. The ranger station was to the right, but Jake turned left, toward the mine. Jake, that's the wrong way. He stopped, his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was different, deeper, rougher. I know, but Elena's already there. How do you know that? He turned slowly. His face was the same, but his eyes were completely black, like Father O'Brien's had been. Because I called her there, he said, smiling with too many teeth. And now I'm calling you. I ran, as fast and as hard as I could. I ran back toward the camp. Behind me, I heard Jake laughing, the sound echoing through the trees. When I reached the camp, I grabbed my hunting knife and barricaded myself in my cabin. All night, I heard Jake walking around outside, calling my name in a sing-song voice. In the morning, it was quiet. I carefully opened the door and looked out. No sign of Jake or Elena. I had to find Elena. I headed toward the ranger station, moving as quietly as I could. The station was small, just one room with a desk and radio equipment. The radio had been smashed to pieces, and there was Elena sitting in the corner. But something was horribly wrong. She looked old. Her hair had gone completely white. Her skin was wrinkled and spotted, hanging loose on her bones like she'd aged 50 years overnight. Elena, I whispered. She looked up with cloudy eyes. Vince, it touched me. Her voice was cracked and weak. As I watched, more wrinkles appeared on her face. She was aging right in front of me. What happened? I asked, kneeling beside her. Jake led me to the mine. Something was waiting there. It had such long fingers. She held up her own hand, which was now gnarled with arthritis. It barely touched me, but I felt my life draining away. Where's Jake now? Dead. It used him to get to me, then threw him aside like garbage. He was fighting it at the end, begging me to run, begging me to kill him. A tear ran down her wrinkled cheek. I couldn't do either. As we talked, Elena kept aging. Her teeth fell out. Her skin became thin as paper. Her eyes clouded over with cataracts. "It's making me live my whole life in fast forward," she gasped. "I can feel the years passing." I tried to help her up, to get her back to camp, but she was too frail. Her bones were brittle, breaking under her skin as I touched her. "The radio," she whispered. I tried to call for help, but it knows. It always knows. Those were her last words. As I held her hand, she aged decades in minutes. Her skin dried and tightened around her bones. Her eyes sank into her skull. And finally, she crumbled away like dust. I was alone now, completely alone with the thing from the mine. I ran back to camp in a daze. Everyone was gone. Rebecca, Father O'Brien, Jake, Alina, all dead in horrible ways. And I was next. I tried to leave, to drive my truck out of this nightmare, but the engine wouldn't start. The metal parts had rusted through, like they were decades old instead of days. When I tried to walk out, following the logging road, something strange happened. I walked for hours, but somehow ended up back at the camp. It was like the forest itself was playing tricks on me. That night, the real horror began. I heard Rebecca's voice outside my window, calling for help. When I looked out, I saw her standing at the edge of the trees, waving for me to follow her. But it couldn't be Rebecca. I'd buried her myself. Then Father O'Brien appeared next to her, his skin hanging loose, like an empty suit. And Jake, with his black eyes and wrong smile, and Alina, old and withered. They called to me all night, their voices getting closer and closer to my cabin. I sat in the corner with my knife, carving piece after piece of wood to keep my hands busy and my mind from breaking. The wood chips piled up around me like snow. By morning, they were gone. But the camp had changed overnight. The buildings seemed to lean at impossible angles. Doors led to different rooms than they had before. The trees around the camp had grown into twisted shapes that looked almost human. I was losing track of time. My watch would show 3 o'clock. Then suddenly it was 7 o'clock. Then back to 5 o'clock. The sun jumped across the sky, rising and setting at random. I couldn't trust my memories anymore. Had I been here for days, weeks? I couldn't remember the faces of the others clearly. Sometimes I couldn't even remember my own name. But one thing became clear to me. I had to destroy the creature. It was the only way to end this, even if I died trying. I gathered everything useful I could find. Gasoline from my truck, matches, my hunting knife, some wood carvings I'd made that Father O'Brien had blessed. I didn't know if any of it would work, but I had to try. My plan was simple. Go into the mine, find the creature's lair, and burn it all down. Maybe fire would kill it, maybe nothing would. But I couldn't just wait to die. As I prepared, I saw shadows gathering outside. Not normal shadows from the sun. These moved on their own, sliding across the ground like oil. They were coming for me. I ran to the mine entrance, the shadows chasing behind me. Inside, the tunnel was different than before, wider, deeper. The walls covered in strange carvings that hurt my eyes to look at. I went deeper and deeper, my flashlight casting crazy shadows on the walls. The air got colder until I could see my breath. Then I heard it, a scraping sound, like metal on stone. Something moving in the darkness ahead. My flashlight beam caught it for just a second. 8 feet tall, skeletal thin, with pale skin stretched over bones. Its fingers were long and sharp like railroad spikes, scraping along the tunnel wall as it moved. The rake, it turned to look at me, and though it had no eyes that I could see, I felt it staring right through me. "Vincent Gallagher," it said, in a voice like stones grinding together. "The last one." I threw the gasoline at it and lit a match. For a moment, the creature was engulfed in flames, screeching in a way that made my ears bleed. But then the flames died down, and it was still there, unharmed. It moved toward me faster than anything should be able to move. Those long fingers reached for me. "Your fear tastes good," it whispered. "Your despair will taste better." I stabbed it with my knife. The blade went in, but no blood came out. Just darkness, like I'd cut a hole in the night itself. The rake grabbed me. Its touch was ice cold, and I felt something being pulled out of me. Not blood or guts, but something deeper. My energy, my life. As it held me, I saw flashes of Rebecca's death, felt Father O'Brien's possession, experienced Jake's betrayal and Elena's aging all at once. With the last of my strength, I carved a warning into the mine wall with my knife. "It never sleeps. IT only waits." The rake's fingers dug deeper into me. I felt myself getting older. weaker, just like Alina had, but it was keeping me conscious, making sure I felt every second of my death. In those final moments, as my life drained away, I understood the truth. This place, this thing, it had been here long before people, and it would be here long after. We were just food to it, nothing more. My last thought was of home, of Detroit, of a normal life I'd never see again. Then darkness took me, and Vincent Gallagher was no more. 25 years later, minus 1999, the minivan bounced along the old logging road, jostling the family inside. "Are we there yet?" whined Zach from the back seat. At 10 years old, he was already tired of being stuck in the car with his parents and older sister. "Almost," said his father, Mike Anderson. "The map says the old Thornwick logging camp should be just around this bend." Mike was a survivalist who had been planning this trip for months. With all the Y2K panic, he wanted his family somewhere safe when the new millennium arrived. Somewhere off the grid. "I still don't see why we had to come all the way out here," said his wife Sarah. "It's the middle of nowhere." "That's the point," Mike replied. "No electricity to fail, no computers to crash, just us and nature." Their 16-year-old daughter, Amber, rolled her eyes. "No internet for 3 months. This is going to be so boring." The van rounded a bend, and the old logging camp came into view. A collection of wooden buildings, weathered by time but still standing. "Home sweet home," Mike announced, parking near the main lodge. The family got out, stretching after the long drive. The air was cool and smelled of pine. "It's so quiet," Sarah said, looking around. "Peaceful." Mike started unloading their supplies. The realtor said no one's lived here for decades. "We've got the whole place to ourselves." As they explored the camp, Zach ran ahead, poking his head into various buildings. "Dad, come look at this," he called from one of the smaller cabins. Inside, they found what looked like someone's old living space. Dust covered everything, but it was clear someone had stayed here. There was a bed, a chair, and oddly, piles of wood chips and half-finished carvings. "Weird," said Amber, picking up one of the carvings. It was a bird with twisted wings. "Look at this," Mike said, finding a journal under the bed. He blew off the dust and opened it. The first page read, "My name is Vincent Gallagher. If you're reading this, get out now." Mike laughed. Some kind of joke, but Zach had found something else. Words carved into the cabin wall, partially hidden behind a shelf. "It never sleeps. IT only waits." "What does that mean, Dad?" Zach asked. "Just someone being silly," Mike assured him. "Probably some teenagers who came up here to scare each other." They continued setting up their new home, cleaning out the main lodge and moving in their supplies. They planned to stay until spring, living off the land and their stored food. That first night, as the family slept in the main lodge, Zach woke up to a strange sound, scratching, like fingernails on wood, coming from beneath the floorboards. "Dad," he whispered, but his parents were sound asleep. The scratching moved, slowly across the floor, stopping right beneath Zach's sleeping bag. Then it was quiet. In the morning, Zach told his family about the noise. "Probably just raccoons," his father said. "This place has been empty a long time. Animals have moved in." But that day, their food started spoiling, much faster than it should have. Metal tools rusted overnight, and Amber found handprints on her bedroom window on the inside. "I want to go home," Sarah said that evening, her voice shaking. "Something's not right here. We just got here," Mike argued. "It's just an old building settling. Nothing to worry about." But as they talked, none of them noticed the fresh claw marks appearing on the outside wall of the lodge. Long, deep grooves, like something with fingers like railroad spikes, had dragged its hand across the wood. And in the old mine shaft on the ridge, something ancient stirred, waking early from its sleep. It was hungry again, and the Anderson family would soon learn what Vincent Gallagher had discovered. 25 years before, that Thornwick Ridge was not a place of safety. It was a feeding ground, and the cycle was beginning again.